We gather together again, this time to rip into the brutality of the Jerusalem attack. Bilal
Attack at the bus depot. The two guys are actually from our area.
Goes into how Israel answers with collective punishment by suffocating an entire community for the acts of a few.
So when they shut this thing down, you're cut off from the rest of the world. They just reopened it for people to enter, not to leave. Everybody that was stuck in Ramallah and had to get hotels or stay at family homes or wherever, like relatives' houses, trying to make it back in right now, and the traffic is unbelievable. My cousins have been stuck in the traffic for like 3 hours now, basically stuck in this tunnel.
We talk about the Warsaw ghetto and the history of Jewish resistance.
Zionism brought terrorism to this area before there was any Palestinian terrorism.
And the Sicarii, they didn't even just kill Romans, they killed fellow Jews they considered to be collaborators. What
Correct.
does that sound like today? That sounds like what the Palestinians are doing.
And the double standards of the Israeli community. We expose how the E1 settlements is the nail in the coffin for a so-called two-state solution, how possible annexation is being mapped like a cynical gerrymander design.
At my village, where we're from, we're northwest Jerusalem. We would be annexed.
To steal land while discarding as many Arabs.
A telling quote, right? Maximum territory, minimum Arab population. That is Zionism encapsulated in 5 words right there.
And how Netanyahu rides a wave of messianic delusion, the nature of his relationship with rabbis like Schneerson.
Everything that you hear Bibi talking about his deep relationship with the Rebbe was this one time.
And whether he is just another ruthless tyrant trying to cling to power.
So do you think Netanyahu is more like Trump? I feel like, especially after he got shot, I feel like there's a level of, he felt like he was almost ordained to some degree. When you have that messianic complex, you'll do crazy things.
I've been thinking the same question. How much is this a religious belief that he is some kind of messianic process, and how much is it just bullshit?
And of course, along the way, we sit as Arabs and Jews together.
The Jewish religion as codified, it's going to be controversial, is the Trojan horse for Zionism. Where are the major Jewish halachic authorities saying that what Israel is doing is wrong?
Bilal, a Palestinian in USA, Elijah, a Texan Jew with Syrian roots, David, a Montreal-born Jew living in Occupied Palestine, and me, a Syrian-born Canadian, drawing the uncomfortable parallels between our own histories.
Right.
You know what that reminds me of? The easy cut of
That's
the
very
deal.
perfect. That's a perfect way to put it.
I'll give you another parallel.
Oh my God. I just put those together.
Our wounds and the future being carved out in our names on the beautiful land we call Levant, Shaam, or Canaan. Without further ado, I present to you episode 12 of the Pan-Levant podcast.
It's been, kind of crazy. Obviously, yesterday with the attack at the bus depot, the two guys are actually from our area. That obviously as soon as it happened, everything shut down. We have a lot of family. Obviously just like most people, younger people especially, they look for a living. So a lot of people either work in Ramallah or in Jerusalem. Those are the two the areas closest to us. And our area is kind of interesting because obviously it's a suburb of Jerusalem, but it's so close yet so far. Before 67, actually up until I would say 92, 93, it was 10-15 minutes here in the middle of Jerusalem. It would actually take longer for us to get to Ramallah than to get to Jerusalem. And so because of that, you have a lot of people from the village that have blue IDs because they have homes. And our family actually used to have an old small house in the old city back in the day, but we sold it to an Armenian family. But we still have like some property and stuff in like Beit Hanina and Shafat and a few other places. And so a lot of my family still have their blue residency, their Jerusalem ID. Those family members work in Al-Quds. We have a rental car company, Dalla, or maybe, I don't know, David, if you've seen any Dalla vehicles around. They do a lot of Al Jazeera, CNN, all those guys. They typically take cars from us because we have both the Palestinian license plates and we have the yellow license plates. We have both yellow and green. So those are helpful for everybody, for especially the media organizations. So anyway, so they all got stuck. And so they're all sitting in Beit Hanina. And then the other side of the family, a lot of them are stuck in Ramallah. And actually, now that I have you guys on here, I've been obviously WhatsApp has not stopped. All day. So here is right now, there's obviously a tunnel that goes between Biddu and Jeep. I'll show you guys a map here in a moment. So this is the main thoroughfare. This is actually a tunnel that goes underneath Givat Ze'ev. So this is what connects our canton with the greater Ramallah canton. So when they shut this thing down, you're cut off from the rest of the world. They just reopened it for people to enter, not to leave. Everybody that was stuck in Ramallah and had to get hotels or stay at family homes or wherever, like relatives' houses, trying to make it back in right now, and the traffic is unbelievable. My cousins have been stuck in the traffic for like 3 hours now, basically stuck in this tunnel. Because they're still doing taftish, they're still doing inspections, for people to get in. So it's absolutely nuts. So, they just have like, this is basically their life. They basically try to, they just make do, with what they've got.
Right. In my eyes, looking at these images, it's so ironic that this is Israel's response, right, to what just happened in Jerusalem with the shooting. Because in my eyes, this is why the shooting happened in the first place.
It's collective punishment, and it's like a thing of like, it's like, okay, who's going to break who? That's really what it is. You will break before me. That is what it has come down to at this point. But at the same time, by trying to break the other, you are fueling their animosity for you in the same breath. And so the reason those two boys ended up doing what they did is this is their whole life to this point, right? If they're around our age, around 18 to 22. They grew up in the wake of the Second Intifada, right? They grew up with every bombing that was occurring in Gaza. Of course, they saw that, but the brutality of the apartheid and occupation in the West Bank, that's what brought them to this. And so Israel amplifying these measures is going to produce not only two, it's going to produce thousands, right? This is the cycle that we're, right? And it's only going to fuel more violence, and it's going to kill more Jews in Jerusalem and elsewhere in the Holy Land. 100%. And what's really wild to me, what's really crazy. This is obviously, I'm a news junkie, so I'm always like checking, especially I work in cybersecurity. So what I tend to do a lot of times is basically just like, I read the news from all sides, and I like try to read all the open source information I can find. So, for example, this is, this is the type of thing that's really mind-blowing to me, right? Like, obviously, we just saw what happened in Qatar and Doha, and this is on an Israeli, WhatsApp channel, Telegram channel, and they're showing how like they're celebrating in the settlements about the bombing, right?
On Qatar,
in Qatar, so it's really like it just goes, it's back and forth, who's going to break who's going to break the will of the other. It's a lose-lose. Everybody's going to lose in this situation. There's no question about it, because I can tell you right now, those were students. Those were two college kids, no priors, no issues from prior to this. These are just regular guys that for a reason or another could not find another solution to this mess. I don't like to compare it, but think of, for example, any type of violent attack on police in the United States by the BLM movement, or like people even that have a breakdown, whether it's a family situation or something like that. They lose their jobs, they lose their capability to be able to provide, or whatever it might be, and there's literally like it's just like a pent up anger. And I have a lot of people, friends and family that know these guys. Like, you have to imagine these are it's a small community, like our village has 3,500 people in it, hasn't grown because every generation now they don't have work in that area, so they have to move out of the village, and so and that's the same with all of the villages around us. So everybody that's still there, that lives there, they're very close.
Yeah.
And, a lot of my family, a lot of my cousins that go to Birzeit University, where these two kids went, well, they're not kids, I'd say they're college students, so a 24-year-old and I think a 22 or 23-year-old. And so they know these guys. These are engineering students, they're not like, we're not talking about troublemakers or like the type of people that are like criminals or like guys that's, these are like, I would say the best of, like these are some of like the more intelligent, more educated folks that are doing this.
You were being very tame with the comparisons you used, because I think in my eyes, a more apt comparison would be the Warsaw ghetto. That's what it is at this point, right? I think you were being very tame comparing it to, say, the BLM movement, right? Because when you talk about literal restrictions, you can't even get out of your neighborhood, right? That is Nazi Germany, right? That is Poland under Nazi occupation, right?
I guess that would be a fair example, but I would say Gaza is Warsaw, right? Like when I think of like actual bombardment, that's what I think of, like really total siege. I think Gaza, and that's what I think of Warsaw ghetto, right?
100%.
Dude, I love like the story of Merrick, Edelman, one of the main commanders during the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. He wrote a letter to Hamas after the 2014 or during the 2014 war, like basically calling him their comrades, his comrades. And he was basically he was basically kind of sidelined but from Israeli society. Like the rest of the resistance movement, or the people that fought in the resistance, were obviously considered heroes in Israel, except for this guy, right? Like this guy was, he was kind of like sidelined and whatever. But when he was talking about the 2014 war, he was talking about Gaza. He's like, I'm watching what we experienced, And so like I read some things about him, and honestly, like unbelievable, dude. Like this is the type of thing. That's the level of willpower that we need. What they went through. They dug tunnels too. Every resistance group digs tunnels. That's just a kind of a thing, right? From Vietnam to the Warsaw Ghetto, everybody digs tunnels. So, but like that's the willpower that I see from, not just from the Palestinian resistance, but you see it with the Sakari, and the Zealots. Yeah. You see it from. It's literally throughout history, especially in this land. It is historically just cyclical.
Yeah. And me and Hayan had an episode a long time ago when we were talking about the roots of terrorism, violent terrorism that takes another person's life. And I told Hayan, I said, terrorism is a Jewish invention. And I'm not talking about like Lehi in the 40s. I'm talking about 2,000 years ago when the Romans were occupying Judea. What did Jews do, right? They formed groups like the Zealot movement that had the Sakari as a sect of that. And the Sakari, they didn't even just kill Romans. They killed fellow Jews they considered to be collaborators. What does that sound like today? That sounds like what the Palestinians are doing.
Hamas. Straight up.
That was Sinwar's story. He killed fellow Palestinians, right? That was Sinwar's story. And like, to me, it's so
the butcher of Khan Yunis. They called him the butcher of Khan Yunis because he was tough. He was a very ruthless guy. There's no question.
Absolutely feared. And that was the tactics 2,000 years ago that the Jews were using in Judea. And it's David, I don't know if you share the same thought, but it's just so shocking because Jews know this history, especially religious Jews. Yet they reject any comparison, as the video I sent to you, Bilal, of Menachem Begin, even in this similarity of anything relating to Jewish resistance, whether it was in the 40s or if it was 2,000 years ago. I don't know if you share that same sentiment, David, but I just find it laughable.
Yeah, for sure. But at least in modern times, I mean, Zionism brought terrorism to this area before there was any Palestinian terrorism. Yeah. But that's true also. And the Maccabees also, the Maccabees, they not only were fighting the Greeks, but they were fighting Hellenism, which means they were attacking Jews. I mean, they were
fighting Western colonial imperialism at the time, basically,
including their own people that were siding with, becoming Hellenized.
So you're right. It goes even farther back than the Zealot movement in the Roman period. It goes all the way back, right? And I guarantee you, there's histories that we probably don't even know about during the Persian period, where Jews were probably assimilating into Persian identity, and there was fighting against that. Maybe not violently, but culturally, 100%. Mm-hmm. But I do want to talk about. I do want to talk about that the Jewish groups, and I think we can define Irgun 100% as a solely Zionist group, but I think Lehi is a very interesting conversation in this, and this is a history a lot of people don't know. Lehi, unlike Irgun, unlike the Haganah, they had Arab Palestinian fighters, and a lot of people don't know this history from the Abu Ghosh village, right?
Yeah, you told me that. That's the first time I heard that. You actually were telling me about that.
This is what my PhD's on. I dove into the archives and focused on this history. They had anti-Zionist Jews within Lehi as well. They had the Tori Karta fighters from Mea Shearim in Jerusalem. They had ultra-secular Jews from a movement called the Canaan, the Canaanite movement, right? Mm-hmm. They were in Lehi. Why did they all go to Lehi? Zionists, extremists that were ultra-religious, anti-Zionists. It was a broad coalition to expel the British from Palestine. That was the only thing that unified everyone in Lehi. And it's very funny. The people that I would say understood Palestinian resistance the most and empathized with it were figures that came out of the Lehi movement, right? So I sent Bilal, David, and Hayan a video comparing Menachem Begin, the leader of Irgun, to a figure who was the true leader of Lehi after Avraham Stern was killed, who was the founder of Lehi. His name was Natan Yellen-Moore. And he ended up founding a group called Semitic Action, and they were a non-Zionist group that was dedicated to unifying all Semitic peoples to oppose Western colonialism. But Nathan Yellen-Moore, he was being asked by a reporter about Black September, right, in the wake of what they did in Munich, and also the prior Black September in Jordan. He basically said, I have empathy with them. I understand them, right? That was the position of any natural person who was colonized. And so I can understand them 100%. And he asked him a question also about identity, right? About how the Zionist movement, Golda Meir specifically said there are no Palestinian people. And he said the youth fighting for their liberation is the true testament of a personhood, of a peoplehood, right? And he said the Palestinian people embody that more than anyone now. And so I thought that was very interesting, that Lehi, fighters that came out of Lehi, they might not have been Zionists, were the ones who understood Palestinian resistance the most, just like the Warsaw Ghetto individual understood Palestinians the most. And it's so funny. It's a quirk of history because you would never expect it, but it is beautiful to see in my eyes, 100%. Yeah.
And it's something that no one really knows about because it's not productive for a state to teach violent resistance to its students. You don't hear about the history of violent resistance to occupation because I feel like they don't want to expose people to the fact that this is a very normal thing. People have always resisted occupation and used violence to resist it. And so it's easier to just show someone in the media being violent and tell them and just project them as being crazy or being outside of the fold of the norm, because you've never laid out the history of how almost every people all across the world have always resisted violently when put under that kind of pressure.
Yep, exactly. And Syria's the same story, man. Literally, whether it was the French, which Syria had a very strong resistance again up until Bashar al-Assad, right? No matter what, if you are oppressed, if you are occupied, it could be an external occupation or an internal occupation. This is a natural human response. And it's so funny, Bilal, when you showed that video of the Israelis, the religious Jews dancing in response to the bombing of Doha, which didn't even end up actually killing anyone in Hamas. In Israeli society, it's condemned when Palestinians like to hand out sweets after an operation, right? Palestinians dance in the streets, right? We say, oh, these people are subhuman. How can they have no empathy? How can they do that? And you show this video of them doing the exact same freaking thing, right? And so it's so funny. We act like, sorry, go ahead.
Were there casualties in Qatar? Because I didn't follow up with that. So do we know if there were deaths, or because I heard it was the airport, right?
I don't think any Hamas, at least. I'm not sure if any other groups.
It was
and I also
near
heard
the
that
airport.
Trump and Qatar actually got advance notice or something.
Yeah, and from what I understand, it was the building that the Hamas envoy was meeting or had just previously met with the American envoy, which is ballsy by the Israelis to just literally bomb exactly where the Americans were.
Right.
I mean, honestly, we were talking about this before, but where is
this going?
It sounds like they're trying their best to make themselves look insane. It's really hard to see this as any other way other than, okay, what else do we have to do in order to receive complete condemnation by the whole world to the point where they're like, okay, these guys need to go. And I just can't figure out any other way.
I think they just expect to do to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. You always Israel has carte blanche. Every country will not respond to its aggression, and they know that too, and they weaponize that to a huge extent. And they know with Syria, when the new government came to power, they didn't wait to negotiate. They took out all of the Air Force, all of the Navy, anything remaining that was potentially to be used violently against Israel. Their policy is do the thing that you want to do, ask for forgiveness later, do damage control later, justify it as light versus dark, evil versus good, stuff like that. They know that they have the Hasbara all over the world that will disseminate that in every language in every corner of the world. It's become a lot weaker though. I think you're right. They've kind of go ahead.
There's a word for this in Hebrew.
Oh, yeah?
It's a Shitat HaMitzliach. Shitat HaMitzliach is I don't know how to say this in English, just see what you can get away with. Just do it. And then if it works, it works. And if they stop you, then like figure out what to...
And figure it out. Yeah.
Figure it
It's
out.
it's almost like the whole friar thing that we talked about. Did we talk about the friar thing? Friar is a Hebrew word meaning like essentially
Yiddish, actually, but
it's oh yeah, there you go. It's Yiddish. But basically means that it's like don't like essentially like a sucker, right? Like don't be a friar, don't be a sucker, right?
Yeah.
Like to kind of you have to bend the rules. You have to kind of crack some eggs, you know, that kind of thing. So it's very interesting. And I think that comes from the whole idea of like the whole sabra mentality, right? To be able like to be you know that this is the especially you have to think that this is a Eurocentric Zionism, Eurocentric kind of movement coming to the Middle East, seeing it as this like savage Orientalist place that you have to like only the strong survive, and you have to be tough, and you have to be, you know, and it comes from that Orientalist perspective, right? That like this area around us is like untamed, and we have to tame it, right? I've heard Smotrich call it multiple times that like, you know, we have to get rid of the snakes and the thorns. You know, speaking about the Palestinians, that like there's, you know, these thornies and the snakes and all this stuff, that this needs to be cleared out, so that way we can have, you know, a safe, comfortable, tamed, you know, place that we can settle, you know, but we just have to clear these snakes and these thorns out of the way. And actually, I was going to bring this up, but now David, now I'm interested. I want to know a little bit more. But remind me to talk about the whole E1 settlement and how that changes things. But before I talk about that, since we're talking about Netanyahu and what this plan is, like where are we going with this? What do you know specifically about like? I know that Netanyahu had a very close relationship with the Rebbe, with Chabad, and that whole Lubavitch movement and the messianic Lubavitch. Do you know much about like their kind of take on things? Because they're kind of unique, right? The fact that they're Orthodox. Go ahead.
Chabad's take on things?
Yes.
Chabad's interesting, David, but if I can go right before you, I don't. Until recently, or even during the Rebbe's life, I don't know if they're outwardly Zionists. I don't know if they officially took a stance, right? Because they tried to balance like the Satmar groups and the Tarta perspective with, I would say, the more Dati Leumi, like the national Zionist movement that was getting more religious. And it's interesting because the Rebbe definitely entertained figures like Netanyahu. A bunch of Israeli prime ministers came to him, asked for advice, but he always, like I would say, played a double game, right? Depending on his audience, right? He if he needed to be Zionist, he would be Zionist, right? But he wouldn't really use nationalist rhetoric, right? He would talk about love the land, right, and talk about mitzvot related to the land, but he would never talk about like the state, if that makes sense. But if he had to be anti-Zionist, he also had that rhetoric in his repertoire. So I would say Chabad was in this weird middle ground. Today, I think it's much more Zionist. It's on the extreme level of Zionism. We saw like the Chabad flag going to Gaza. People planted that. And so I think Chabad today isn't the same as it was with the Rebbe. But David, you probably know more than me on this. And so I'm interested on your take.
Yeah, well, one thing I'll say off the bat, Bilal, is that Bibi characterizes himself as having a close relationship with the Rebbe. He plays that up. I don't think they had a close relationship. They met on certain occasions. I think they met on 2 or 3 occasions, because before he was like a politician, he was the Shagrir ambassador. He was an ambassador, so he was ambassador to the United States. He was in New York.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And at that time, the Rebbe was very, very influential. So him being strategic, wants to get in with the Rebbe. Like back in the day, what would happen with the Rebbe is that he is a Rebbe of a Hasidic movement. So he's basically their king. He really is their king. But there's lots of Hasidic Rebbes. Like there's the Belz Rebbe and there's the Satmar Rebbe. Satmar is also a Hasidic movement. So they had a Rebbe. Usually what happens is you go to get a bracha from a Rebbe.
Yeah.
You come with some money. The Rebbes are already rich, but you want to get a bracha.
Of course.
You give him a little money. He gives you a bracha. The Chabad Rebbe was a little bit different, Schneerson, in that this is really, really innovative. No other Rebbe did this. He would give $1 when you meet him. And people, they don't spend the money. They put it on their, if you're a Chabadnik, you put it on your wall with a picture of you with the Rebbe. Everything that you hear Bibi talking about his deep relationship with the Rebbe was this one time that he goes to meet the Rebbe and get $1 from the Rebbe, and there's a video of it. You can see the whole.
I've seen it. Yeah.
The whole conversation, and you can see clearly that what the Rebbe is interested is in the Mashiach. Yeah. He wants the Mashiach
arrival.
To come.
Yes, he wants the Mashiach
and
to come.
His people thought that he was the Mashiach. He never explicitly said that he was the Mashiach, but he never didn't say, so that he could keep his followers hanging on every word. That is he going to say that he's the Mashiach? Is this speech the time that he's going to say that it revealed that he never revealed that he was the Mashiach? Then he became, according to most people, like senile and then couldn't talk. His followers obviously thought that this was all a show, and that really, like, anytime he's gonna reveal that he died.
They still believe that he is the Mashiach, correct? Yeah. In many cases,
they believe that he's still alive. My brother-in-law thinks that maybe he's
like the hidden Mashiach, basically, which is so crazy because, and Hayan, you might know this, in Islam, especially in the Shia version, there is the idea of the hidden Mahdi, right? Like, it's so crazy.
Oh, yeah?
Like the
you can't escape those stupid Bashar al-Assad, Imam al-Halimi.
What's the story of
Have
the
you gotten those? Oh my God, man, they flood
There's like
my
a
feed.
Mahdi and then a hidden Mahdi.
Well, they believe that you'll have to correct me on this, Hayan. You might know this better than I do.
Not the Mehdi is someone different. The Mehdi is like the anointed one. That's more their Moshiach, but their 12th Imam went into hiding, and they think he's going to come back in the end of days, and the two will be related, but they're not the same person.
They're not. You might. Yes, that sounds right. Because there's El Masih is Jesus, Isa alayhi salam. So he's still El Masih. But then you also have El Mahdi. And then you also have the Imam that will come with the Mahdi, essentially, and one of them is alive and is hidden, right? And God, like, just the parallels of all of these, it's wild.
Eschatology in general is really creepy, man. Like, people that root their ideology in wanting to bring about the end of days are like really, like, obviously, like ISIS was kind of like that too. Like, they believed that they were
black
ushering
flags in, and they all like dressed in, They just took one hadith and they just ran with it.
So ISIS is very Zionist in their pursuit of bringing in their end times, right? Because they believe they need the global caliphate, and then that will usher in the Mahdi, right? So very much like a religious Zionist perspective, right? If you can annex enough territory, create biblical Israel, that's a prerequisite. Rebuild the temple, then you will get Moshiach. So the parallels are very similar ideologically.
It's also like kind of like reverse engineering stuff. Like, it's weird. It's very
and that's what I kind of felt with Chabad and with the Rebbe, just reading about the Rebbe's kind of teachings. You're absolutely right, because he definitely did not he never, like, quote unquote, like, promoted or supported the state or the actual political state, but it definitely felt like it was a means to an end. That this needs to happen, and he was also very open to, which was also, I think, very different than many Hasidic movements, is he actually, like, kind of did, I don't know what the word would be in Jewish spirituality, but in Islam you would call it da'wah, right? Like, he actually went out of his way to essentially proselytize to the non-religious Jews, which is very, very different than others,
Yes, and he would have Gentiles who came in constantly and received brachot, that received blessings from him, if I'm not mistaken, David. I don't know if other Chabad-related movements do that. I don't know. If you do, I'm not sure.
Chabad. They're very into, I mean, in Hebrew, what you would call dawa in Hebrew would be kiruv. So they outreach.
Yes, outreach. Yes.
They would have the mitzvah tanks, and you would go around with the tefillin and find people who are Jewish.
Funny. I've been approached many times when I was in New York to wear tefillin. They think that I'm immediately like, "Are you Jewish? You want to wear some?"
Cousins on
It's always great having that conversation. That's always interesting. The face change is always great, but
But David, I think he's specifically asking to goyim, to non-Jews, right? Because like the mitzvah tanks are specifically going to Jews and trying to get them to wrap tefillin and doing all this stuff. But outreach to non-Jews, I don't. Yeah.
Very much not into outreach. As soon as they found out that you were not Jewish, they're not interested in you, Bilal. Right?
Yeah, I know.
Am I right?
Immediately.
And
Night
I mean,
and day.
and this is going back to your question about Bibi and the Rebbe, is that he was interested in Mashiach, and in a lot of ways how the national religious, you want to call them Zionist religious, the religious Zionists, they actually don't, a lot of them don't believe in this, the Knesset. They don't, you know, the Zev
political
and Herzl, they were all like, they weren't religious, they're kofers, they're kufr. What, how do you call them? We have the same word. Huh? Yeah,
and they would prefer, they think the Knesset is like a Western non-Jewish political institution, so they would prefer like a Sanhedrin coming back.
Sanhedrin, exactly. Yeah.
But they believe that it is a stepping stone towards some kind of theocratic state with the Mashiach ruling over as a king and building the Beit Mikdash, and that's kind of what the Rebbe was all about. Like the Rebbe wanted Mashiach, and probably believed that Bibi was like gonna help that happen.
Yeah,
that might have been.
Well, Bibi loves to like just take any kind of ally he can find if they believe in something that is beneficial to his power or to, you know, whatever he's wanting to achieve. Like he'll take it. Like he'll take help from like Christian Zionists who literally believe like he's gonna be raptured, you know, and he does. Okay, cool. We're best friends, you know. You guys are friends of Israel. Like he's all good.
So, do you think Netanyahu is more like Trump? I feel like, especially after he got shot, I feel like there's a level of he felt like he was almost ordained to some degree. When you have that messianic complex, you'll do crazy things.
I've been thinking the same question. How much is this a religious belief that he is some kind of messianic process, and how much is it just bullshit? Like I really don't know. I have no idea. Like I've wondered, how do you get to be a person like him? And I think maybe a part of it is not even, I mean, he's not a religious person, right? I mean, or maybe you never know what's going on inside a person's head. But I think, I mean, he was not groomed to be who he was. It was really his older brother. Yeah. You know, Yoni Netanyahu was supposed to be the guy, and he was killed. You know,
Ethiopia, right?
In Uganda.
Right?
It was a mission. They were the plane was hijacked.
Yeah.
Look, this was the story for me about how like the IDF is the most moral army. They're fucking awesome. They know what they're doing, and they're brave. They went in there. They saved all those hostages. And the only one that didn't make it was the leader of that mission, which was Yoni Netanyahu, right? So now Bibi is the younger son, is the younger brother, and he sees that, and he's like, okay, one day I'll get revenge from my older brother. I mean, that's maybe
it's like the quintessential hero story, you know?
Yeah.
It's hard for me to think that he has any actual like personal grievance that he's trying to get revenge for. I think when it comes to like dictators, a lot of them literally just do everything to preserve their power, and if they feel like they're going down, they want to bring everyone down with them. And I was going to bring up Bashar, and you only made it more salient of a comparison when you said that his brother was the one that was groomed, because Bashar also was the same situation, you know. Bashar's older brother was actually the one groomed to be Hafiz's successor. He died in a car accident. And so Bashar was like kind of just like an ophthalmologist in London before becoming president. But once he got into power and saw that like there's actual threats to his life and to his power, obviously he really liked having that power. And like Hafiz is quoted saying like if we fall, we fall on the bodies of our enemies. You know, so they carry this idea of if I'm going down, you're bringing down with me. Yeah, exactly. And I think Putin operates this way. I think Trump operates this way, and I think Netanyahu operates this way, where they're all about self-preservation. You know, they're not actually like very ideologically driven. They just want to maintain power, like, you know, keep pushing his trials forward and forward. You know, like that's what I think he's like. He's just, it's a policy of just like kicking the can down the road to
Yeah.
ever face any kind of accountability possible.
And to push the similarities even further, they're both really products of their fathers as well, right? You know, Assad with Hafez, his father, but Netanyahu with his father Ben Zion, who was like huge in the revisionist Zionist movement. He was a disciple of Zev Jabotinsky. But I think at the same time, while he was a disciple of his father, Netanyahu like creeped into, I would say, like the more like underground, like revisionist side of things, right? Specifically, I think he really admires one individual in particular, and that's Abba Achimeyer. He was like the original like supporter of fascism within the Zionist movement. He was the one who was basically saying that like Zev Jabotinsky should be like the like Hitler of the Zionist movement, and just should be a hardcore authoritarian. And we know this because like Netanyahu is very big on like supporting these figures from the Irgun movement, right? From Lehi and all these people that were like Israel Eldad was another one from Lehi who was like a pure theocratic nut job, right? Really encapsulating Bilal what you're talking about. Like he's like, we need greater Israel. We're gonna rebuild the temple, right? That was like Israel Eldad, and he like Netanyahu like loved Israel Eldad. These were the figures that he like beloved. And we have the luxury of having Netanyahu's early on writings when I think he was more authentic to his actual ideology. I think as he got into the world of power, he changed, right? I think he became someone who wanted to hold on to power. But early on, I think he was someone who very desperately venerated these figures who wanted annexation, not only of all of Palestine, but truly greater Israel, right? Nile to the Euphrates. Like these are the figures that he truly venerated. And so I think now he's changed, but I think in that core, his child still exists, right? He still deep down wants annexation, and he'll cover it through a Ben Gvir and Smoltrich and say, I have to do it because these figures in my coalition want it. But I think deep down, he's still the same beast he was when he was a child, without a doubt.
It's one of those things where, you know, you really go back and you start looking at it from, like you said, I always at least try to compare, you know, like when I think of Assad's reign and their family in general, I just think Kim Jong-un. I just think the Kims, because that's really what it was, and it makes a lot of sense. Hayan, what you're saying is that, you know, once Bashar was there, there's two things that first of all happened. Obviously, he's put in that position, right, where now he feels like, okay, if I don't do the right thing, I'm under threat. I'm coming into a situation where people hate the regime already. They've already gassed, they've already crushed resistance in the past. Obviously, Hafez al-Assad, what he did in Halab and Hama, back in the, what was it, the 80s, I believe, 80 something,
82,
85,
82.
82. There's that situation. Then also, you have a bit of responsibility for this minority, this benefactory minority, which is Assad's family and the Alawi clans in general that were benefiting from Assad's rule. And just like anything else, when you have oppression, generation after generation, decade after decade, there's going to be massive amounts of pent-up hatred and anger at that benefactory family. You know, the way I see it's like kind of like the Hunger Games, you know? Like, I mean, if you read the books, they're a lot worse than the movies. They're a lot more brutal, right? Like when they enter the Capitol.
They're a lot better than the,
yes,
the movies are great. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. That's what I mean. Yes. But like the actual brutality of like, you know, the districts, attacking the Capitol and it's much
and President
more
Coyne, like that plot at the end where she wants to like, because they have power now, what do? They want to make the Hunger Games against their former oppressors.
Yes.
Once you gain power, you have that pent up like tension,
and that's what's terrifying to me.
Want for revenge, and it's kind of like
also
people always said like Syria would do the same. Like if Assad fell, the Sunnis would go and butcher everyone, and it's like, I mean, they played it up like it was going to be like crazy, but they were right. Like I'll come out and say they were right. It was not to the extent that they were saying it was going to be.
But it's definitely, but that is going to happen, right? There will be people there will be people, unfortunately, there will be people that won't just, forgive and move to a better future. And that's what I am what I fear, especially from the Palestinian community, especially in the West Bank, Gaza is one thing. Gaza, they had 15 to 20 years of isolation where they basically said, okay, 2014 happened, 2000, well, 2007, 2009, 2012, then 2014 happened. And so for that entire time, they're going to say, well, we need to build some sort of deterrence. And they kind of did that, to some degree. There was obviously a lot of money transfers happening, and there was a lot going on. But in the West Bank, it's been day in, day out of occupation. It's been dealing with checkpoints on a day-to-day basis. Whereas in Gaza, for that 15 years, the Israelis kind of became the boogeyman. They were the not seen. They were around, but they were not. They were not there directly.
Like an invisible enemy. Yeah.
Correct. My oh man, here's the story. My dad, back before 67, before the occupation of 67, he was born in 55, so he remembers it very clearly. And he said that as a kid, he thought Israelis, Jews in general, because that's what you compare. Jews are Israelis, like they're the same thing. As a child, they thought he thought they had tails. As a child. He thought they had tails. Wow. He didn't. That's how alien they were to him. He heard Deir Yassin, he heard Kufr Qasim, he heard all of these terrifying stories, and he heard that these people are on the other side of this border, and when they heard that they're coming, and now they're going to come, he really thought, he said that as a when they first showed up, he was hiding behind my grandfather, his dad, think
and you see the same
tails.
effect with Israelis who are not exposed at all to any other people too. They also have this amalgamation, imagined enemy that they believe is
the quickest
rabid.
thing that happens is we dehumanize each other. We turn each other into something that's less than, or just alien. And what's worrying to me is that in the Dafa and in the West Bank, this tit for tat situation, is only getting things. I'm worried about the Palestinians that live there, that are say living in Jenin or Nablus or Ramallah. They don't have very much connection. They don't really have to see as much. They haven't had to see as much Israelis on a day-to-day basis if they live in those places, but now it's becoming they're there, and they're there on a daily, and it's on the they're only seeing the soldiers. They're seeing people that are there to they have guns. It's not like you're not seeing just regular people that are going to stop by at a gas station that you're going to or whatever. You're not meeting those people at all. You're just meeting the soldiers. You're just meeting people that you can't even get close to. Especially now, back in, when I was there, last time I was there, you could at least have a discussion with a soldier relatively close by without feeling completely that you're being threatened, that there's a tension, a deep tension, it's just different now. It's very different, and it's terrifying. But I think to kind of bring us into the whole E1 thing.
Please do.
I wanted to show this to you guys because I think that this would be a good way to explain why this, this really is the death of the of a two-state solution. This one final thing breaks the idea of a two-state solution wholeheartly. And
give the context for Smoltrich's plans if you can.
I actually have the map here that he pulled out, that he showed off, and what they expect to do. They're planning on annexing 82% of the West Bank.
It's crazy to still hear about the two-state solution. Settlements have always been, a way to completely annihilate any idea that was ever going to happen.
Oh yeah, 100%. Area C making up, what is it, nearly 2/3 of the West Bank, and then strategically putting settlements in every vital point of Area C to prevent contiguity. Of course.
Yeah, so this is basically what they dropped the other day.
That's such a telling quote, right? Maximum territory, minimum Arab population. That is
Yeah.
Zionism encapsulated in 5 words right there. 6
And
words.
that's
Sorry.
what you were saying about annexation. That's the problem, is that if they annexed all of the rest of Palestine, they'd have too many Arabs that they don't want. They're waiting for them to leave.
Correct.
Even without right of return. Without right of return, they would be 49% of the population, still to a 51% Palestinian demographic.
There we go. That's a better picture right there. So at my village, where we're from, we're northwest Jerusalem. We would be annexed.
Yeah.
They plan on annexing us. And so I think the fact that the attackers came from that area is terrifying to them, because it's been a relatively quieter area. We have a lot of settlements around us, and so it's been very cantonized for a long period of time. And so since they came from Al-Kibab and Qatanna, which are just to kind of show you here on the map. So this is actually where I'm from. Small village just near the we have Ain Salman over here, which is it's an old
Why do they make so many winding roads like that?
It's because of the hills. I'll show you. Some of it is just because, if you can tell, these are actually Israeli settlers from across that came and took some pictures of our little. We have a natural spring called Ain Salman. And I'm wondering if it's because it's Ain of Solomon that they came to check it out. But we have, so anytime you see a road that says El Jaish, that just means this, that's a military road. This here is a big settlement that's been built. And so essentially what I'm talking about for E1 is this area is the canton. So you'll notice here, let me see if I can change this to, let me do just like a regular map. Might be a little easier to see. So basically you'll see here's Beit Duku, Beit Hanan, Kbeba, Qatanna, Biddu. These areas right here are all Palestinian neighborhoods and villages. And so for example, for us, we would take this road 4365, and then if I go to, like, you'll see here, this is the separation wall. So we would take this road all the way down, and if you'll notice right over here, there is this road right here. This is the tunnel that I was showing you guys. So this right here is the tunnel. You can see it's actually, like, you can see where the area kind of goes over it. So all this land here has been was Palestinian farmland. That's all been taken ever since they put that back in 2005. And so this is all now part of the settlement. And so this is where they can basically close off at any given time. Once they close that road, all of these villages are shut off from the rest of Ramallah. And you'll notice here, obviously, you've got Ramallah up here, and then you have Ram and Kalandia. And then once you go south of here, you get into Al-Quds and Jerusalem. And so they can shut that off. Now, if you want to say get to Beit Lahem, right, from here, you would essentially, for us, for example, we would take that tunnel, take it into Bir Nabala. Bir Nabala, we would then cross under the highway here. There's a road here, 4502. This is, we would take that underneath that highway, and then it would then connect us to the rest of Ramallah. And so we would then kind of take a turn around down to Ramallah Street, and then you've got Kalandia here to go into Jerusalem. This is the Kalandia checkpoint. If you didn't want to take Kalandia and you were just a green ID and you couldn't get into Kalandia, but you want to get to Beit Lahem, you would take this Highway 60, Shara Sittin, and this Highway 60, you would take it all the way down. Here's 437, and this is where the E1 would come into play. So basically, this area right here, where if we go down to, here's Ma'ali Adumim, and this is, so if I, like, basically this is Highway 1. Anything past Highway 1 on this side, that's Jerusalem, right? So that's outside of Palestinian territory, right? Or it's East Jerusalem, but it's been annexed by Israel. So that is outside of the realm of having the Palestinian state. You really only have this area right here, it's a very small, this is, if I go from Highway 1 to here, about 2 miles. It's a width of 2 miles because past this is Area C. That was never going to be part of the Palestinian state. And so this here, this little kind of small section is what connects the northern West Bank to the southern West Bank.
Wow.
And E1 basically splits that in half. So if I show you a map of E1, that right there, there's Mali Adumim. That's Area C, past that. This is obviously, as I said here, Shafat, Anat, these are all part of East Jerusalem, Abu Dis. And so that little zone right there, that is the only way for Palestinians to go from, say, Ramallah to Bethlehem, or like, say, Nablus to El Khalil, Hebron. Yeah. So once that area is blocked off, or it becomes a settlement block, Mali Adumim becomes part of Jerusalem, the rest of Greater Jerusalem, and then you have lost any kind of connection between the north and the south. Now, they might build a tunnel or something. That might be something like they've done. They've done that for many different places in the West Bank. But that means that, in essence, sovereignty is gone, right? Like, there's no chance, because that tunnel would mean that the Israelis have control to be able to open and close and do, whatever that they want to do. And so that right there negates the PA, negates any idea, any semblance of like a viable Palestinian state.
There's not a lot of states would accept not having a contiguous border. Like, there's some that have like exclaves and stuff, but like, you gotta have one connected state where it's like. But I mean, even the fact that if there was a two-state solution, wouldn't Gaza also be part of it? And it's like fully separated.
Yeah, and they've talked about like the corridor, like having a corridor between the two and stuff. Highway
plan. Highway over the entire state of Israel.
Right. Or something along those lines. Yeah, but again, and now with his new map, that's even been broken down even further, which is, it's now literally just actual like now it's just little Bantustans,
Yeah.
It's just these little and it makes perfect sense because me and my brother were talking about this yesterday. The villages have not grown because there's no capability of being able to build jobs or anything like that. So naturally, the Palestinians have essentially condensed themselves into the cities. Yeah. All of the villages around Nablus, the younger generations have moved into Nablus. Same with Jenin, same with Tulkarem, same with Kirk, same with Ramallah. They're all moving into these. So Smotrich's genius in this manner, where he's saying, oh yeah, we can take 80% of the land, and we're only really going to have to deal with 20 or 30% of the Palestinian population, because the rest of them are already been condensed and concentrated into these larger city block, city landmass areas. Yeah. And they already said, like, when they annex us, we wouldn't be getting Israeli citizenship. Like, they already specified, like, we would be getting the same residency permits that the Palestinians in East Jerusalem get. And so what that would mean is I would immediately, unless I moved there, right, and like move there relatively quickly, if this were to happen, I would lose my rights to citizenship. I would lose my rights. Like, I would essentially no longer be politically associated with the land at all, right? Because that's how the residency permits work, right? Like, you have to live there in order for you to maintain it. As soon as you've left, so that's it's just an easy way for them to get more and more people out as much as possible. My dad lost his blue ID years ago, so he's not a Palestinian. When he goes to Palestine as a visitor, with a visitor visa, even though he was born there. So that's just the situation. And what that also says is that, like, for example, all of my cousins and family members that now live in Ramallah in order to work, they would have to make a decision. Either I stay in Ramallah and lose my residency and just accept, maybe some form of like residency in Ramallah, or I would have to move back to Beit Dukku, back to the village, and try to make things work,
Yeah.
It's really just a and Smotrich is one of those guys where he definitely talks a big game, but
you could see it as just pushing the Overton window too. Like people who say really crazy, outlandish things, they're kind of normalizing maybe like the lesser version of that, so that they can,
What was that word? What was that phrase, David?
Yeah. That could be. Is this something that has been passed in Knesset?
I think it's been proposed. That map has just been proposed. I think Smotrich just posted that like maybe about a week ago. So it's relatively new. But I mean, is that I wouldn't be surprised if it does pass. In this situation, like now at this point, the question is how quickly can that become a reality? The roads are already there. The barriers are already there. The roadblocks are already there. So from a practical standpoint, like I said, the West Bank, it's literally like a switch they can turn on, or turn off whenever they want.
Same with Golan, by the way. Like they might just do it in a sweep, yeah.
Right.
Because it's already occupied and everything.
They're good at that. The Israelis are good at that, man. They know how to put facts on the ground. They know where to put the settlements. They know where to put the roads and everything like that in a manner. Actually, one of the craziest things that blew my mind, a long time ago when we took a trip to Bethlehem. If you are Palestinian, it is so obvious. The apartheid is so obvious, and it's so hard for people that are living there to understand how people outside of that of Palestine to not see the apartheid. And so I started looking at the maps more, and I noticed, like, for example, the highway system and the roads that we take, some of them are almost right next to each other. Like you couldn't tell, but if you were there, you could see that there's a big ass wall in between. Yeah. So like if you were to look at like the road that connects, for example, the one that we were just looking at from Ramallah to Bethlehem, all right, that road, a good chunk of it actually is parallel to Highway 1. Yeah. And so you have Highway 1 on one side, which is an Israeli road, very, very heavy, traffic road. And then you have a wall, and then you have a very small road right next to it that is the Palestinian road. And it's like living in two worlds, right? But they're right next to each other. And they do this over and over again. So it's really it's like an evil genius way of like, it's a system, man. It's a real system. Like it's a heavy duty system. It's not.
Reminds me of like the Zone of Interest. That movie where it's like it depicts the Holocaust, but it doesn't show a single victim of the Holocaust. It just shows like the people partying. And I didn't see the movie, but there's like a clip or something.
Yeah. You're living in two worlds. You're literally living in two worlds. I mean, there's nothing more jarring than seeing, like, for example, the beaches in Ascalon and Ashkelon, and right across, less than a mile away, you have literally destruction and death in Gaza, right? They're like they can see each other. If you're on the beach in Gaza, in the most northern part, you can look down the beach and you can see Ascalon, and you could probably see people, if you had some binoculars, you could probably see people sunbathing on the beach. Yeah. It's a really just jarring thing to think about. That those two things can happen in the same place.
But there's no real excuse. Like there's media that they could see. If we're in Canada and USA and we can see it, like they can. I don't think the media is that restricted in the sense that like you can go on social media and still see it. I know their TVs won't broadcast it, but
I mean, David, you can probably tell us better than others because I from what I hear, a lot of people have no like. I mean, I'm sure some of it is denial. But
exactly, yeah, they have no interest in searching for it.
You're talking about Israelis have the internet access in Israel is amazing. It's pretty much unlimited. Like in Canada, United States, you have like you like have to buy a package. Like you get a certain amount of hours or something.
It used to be. Now they've become more.
They've
like
kind of made it more unlimited now that fiber. Yeah. But yeah, Israel had fiber and much more, a lot faster than most of the U.S.
It's been unlimited here for years, and everyone's on TikTok and Facebook and
it's not as censored as like somewhere like Turkey,
I mean, whoever you're asking me a question that once again, like I ponder this the same question with Bibi. Like I've been wondering the same thing, like, and I sometimes can have a conversation. In fact, I had a conversation on Shabbat, and whenever this gets brought up, the conversation with the family, with Hadar, my wife's family, which ended terribly, like shouting, and it's just whenever I get the urge to bring this up, it does not go well. But like, I'm just asking my. Oh my gosh, how do I get into this? Like, we were talking about this. Like, what do you think is going on? What do you think? And they know what's happening. They just think it's okay, and it's because of the brain. Look, my niece, my wife's niece, but she's 16, 17 years old, and it was getting very heated. My father-in-law gets out of the room. He leaves. He doesn't even want to hear me. He goes into a different room, and then I'm like, just tell me something. Tell me, 4-year-old deserves to 4-year-old in Gaza, 4-year-old girl deserves to die. She's like, well, yeah, because she's going to grow up to be. I'm like, what do you mean? Yes, because she's going to grow up to, like, but they're my only explanation for this is that very, very heavy brainwashing. So they do know what's happening. It's not that they just don't know. They know to a certain extent. They know they maybe haven't seen the images, and if they saw the images, it would jar them and maybe do something, and maybe not. You're shaking your head. Maybe not.
They have an aversion to the truth in the sense that, like, if they see something awful that actually makes them feel something, they'll have a thought-stopping moment where they can just immediately justify it. Like, I'm sure it's pretty reminiscent of like Trump voters right now, with how like you can fully see his policies like hurting immigrants that are not breaking the law in any way. They're still being deported, and even like citizens are being like harassed by ICE and stuff like that. But the mega base doesn't really like focus on it. They don't want to really engage with it.
It's like a cult, honestly.
Yeah. But
that's
also just people are averse to things that are not like that are contradictory to what they believe. They prefer the comfortable narrative that they've been brainwashed to believe, like you said.
It's more than anything, more than not knowing. It is some, and I don't know how it's happening. I'll just tell you this story. Okay, it's very disturbing, but I will tell you that a year ago, that my daughter is in first grade now, so she was still in kindergarten, right? And so now this is not coming from my house, but we're in the car, and she asked me, Abba, like, we hate Arabs, right?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? First of all, I told her, you're an Arab. Like, your mother is Tunisian. Your grandmother's native language is Arabic. Your grandfather's native language is Arabic. My friends are Palestinians. I'm telling her, and I wasn't getting angry, but I'm like.
It's mind blowing to you.
Yeah.
But to her, she's just, this is what she's heard. This is, and
this is, and the reason why I bring this up is because at that moment I realized, like, whatever's happening, it happens in kindergarten, and they are being brainwashed.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're saying or how this happens. I have no idea how this happens, but whatever happens, it happens in kindergarten. And I know she idealizes the soldiers. Like, what they do in the kindergarten is that you send packages to soldiers, right? You make cute cards to them and send them chocolates, and in kindergarten, it's one of the things that you do in kindergarten to instill within these children's minds that these soldiers are protecting them. You look up to them. Look, they're risking their lives in order that we can have this amazing life. And if they'll bring a soldier in, to the kindergarten, and my daughter, like, just thinks they're just these
Because you're so
amazing.
susceptible to that kind of influence as
Especially
a kid.
if
You
you're
don't know
told they are your heroes. They're protecting you. They're keeping the bad
by
people
authority
away.
figures that you trust, like your teacher. And
Laban,
this is
of
pretty
course they were gonna feel that
this is
way.
pretty boilerplate nationalism, by the way. Like even Remembrance Day ceremonies in Canada, like if you think about, like, it's all very banal because you don't like think about it. It's just something we do. We put the wreath or whatever, and we go and put the, like, there was these like gym events that we would do on November 11th every year. And like if you think about that, that is kind of propaganda too, because they don't teach us about what the Canadian forces really did. And the Canadian forces are the reason the Geneva Convention was invented.
Yeah.
Did you
You
know
guys would
that?
do some crazy stuff.
Well,
You would like literally
Canadians
throw
are sick, dude.
dude.
You
Like,
guys just act friendly. You guys are
For real, dude, actual like crazy nuts. You guys would throw soup right into like during the trench warfare, and then like every fifth soup can wasn't a soup can; it was a grenade, right?
It was a grenade.
People were instinctually thinking, "Oh, they're gonna give us more soup." Get blown up, right? That's all on you. That's all on you. I guess me too, because I'm a dual citizen. But yeah,
but
our
it's
people are
like,
crazy.
that's the stuff that I learned when, like, incidentally later on. But as a kid, you never got any impression that they did anything wrong. It was just
camps,
like,
right. the boarding schools for the
residential
Inuit and
schools. Yeah. Oh no, they actually they teach that a lot. And I'm not gonna lie, we were kind of inundated with Aboriginal stuff in Canada, but if you look into like the policy of reconciliation and whatever that actually has been ongoing, it's like pretty pathetic too. It's like we were kind of inundated with like Aboriginal culture and the history of their oppression and stuff, but it's not rooted in like a reconciliation narrative. It's just that like
sympathy.
We did a bad thing.
We did
it's
a bad
past.
But
it's
another
over.
thing,
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And David,
which, by the way, kind of, I mean, down the line, 10, 15, 20 years from now,
that's what Israel
exactly how they'll act with us. That's what they'll say,
Canada
and that's the thing.
Canada and US is Israel in the future.
Yeah, in many ways.
Or one pathway, yeah.
David, I have a question for you. Because you were in Canadian Jewish society for a long time. My experience in American Jewish society is the exact same thing you just talked about with Israel, right? Growing up, I was 12 years old when my teacher came in during Operation Cast Lead and told me Arabs are barbaric, they're terroristic, they're inherently anti-Semitic. This wasn't in Israel, it was in an American Jewish school, right? So Canada, I assume, was the exact same way for you, but you didn't end up like that. So it's curious, unless you had a different experience.
I can't explain it. I really can't explain it. It could be because like I was in a Jewish school only for first and second grade.
Interesting.
And then
I think
for
Montreal
some
has
reason,
an influence on you, man.
for
It's
some
a very
reason,
progressive place.
Third grade, I was in actually I was one of the only Jews in that school. It's really bizarre actually, my upbringing. I don't know why my parents decided to do that, because my younger brother stayed in the Jewish school for the entire like
you were the test subject.
Yeah.
It could be, and I got a very balanced a contradictory upbringing, because it was a very Christian school. I was literally one of the only two Jews in that school, but for this first and second grade of Jewish school, we didn't really get into the whole modern history of the state of Israel and the conflict with Arabs. It was just about Abraham and Sarah coming to Eretz Canaan, and then just the Breshit, the Genesis story.
Yeah.
And then the whole Joshua thing that comes in later. Once they start teaching about Joshua and the conquest of Canaan, they do it in a way that you're like, oh, that's kind of like what we're doing now. Okay, so we're reliving the biblical times. We're just now reconquesting, from the Arabs.
Yeah.
And then it makes it so that makes it okay, right?
Yeah.
But I never got there, because when they start teaching that, I'm already in regular public school.
And it's so interesting because we fully acknowledge, right, what happened to the Canaanites was a genocide, right? Or I mean, historically speaking, we can speak on a historical level, didn't happen, right? And me and David, we've talked about how really the Canaanites were a parallel for Israelites that were transgressing, following multiple gods, whatever it may be, right? Because it's the same punishment for the Canaanites as an Israelite who transgresses. But we fully acknowledge it's a genocide. But in this case, right, there's an apprehension to say it's a genocide, right? To even acknowledge the pain that we're inflicting. We fully acknowledge the biblical pain that we caused the Canaanites, but in this case, we can't do that for some reason. So I find that to be an interesting parallel, right?
Which is also interesting because if you notice, like, yes, they might play it up that it was a genocide, and I think that was, if anything, that's really just a means to basically say that culture and that people disappeared. They were gone off the face of the earth. They no longer exist. When in reality, it was much less of a genocide and much more of a regime change and a you know what I mean? It was like you cut the head off, remove the whatever, and then the people it's kind of a whole like submit or die kind of thing. And if you submit and you're willing to kind of play by our rules, then you're allowed to stick around. And then that's kind of how it was in most situations back then.
It was a mass assimilation attempt, most likely, right? Because when the time this was written, the lines between Israelite and Canaanite were still very blurry, and so the priesthood came about, and I would say that they were the true monotheists at the time, but the lay people within the southern portion of the Levant, they were following Baal, they were following all these other gods, and so there was an attempt to basically try and get them to follow the priesthood belief of that there is only one God, there are no other gods but Elohim is the head of the pantheon of the Canaanite religion. There are no other gods, actually. It's only Elohim. All the others are false, right? So they're trying to assimilate them into their ideology. So there might have been some bloodshed, right, to force them into that worldview, but there was not an annihilation of a people. It was one people assimilating into a new identity that was created within that society, right? And so that's what makes it so interesting to me. But David, I want to
parallels Muhammad and Quraysh. Same situation, right?
Right.
That literally went to the conquest of Mecca was basically that. Hey, we're coming back. We've grown in number, and you're all like, the first thing they did was everybody that is in the houses of these people, you're all safe. You can practice whatever you want, but you're now under Muslim rule. And it's just literally the same history over and over again. I feel like the idea of the Jewish people didn't really kind of solidify until after the exodus from Egypt and coming back to Canaan with Moses. I feel like at that point then it was much more like kind of like the in group versus the out group. The group of people that came in and together and said, we are the tribes, the children of Israel, and these other people that are living there. Now there's like a very big stark difference between the two.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I would even argue that Jewish identity specifically was something that, in terms of religion, as we know it today, was really only solidified after the Babylonian exile, right? Many people believe that the Exodus story probably didn't really happen. There might have been a few Jews that were in Egypt that might have come back and they were slaves, but then they shared their tale. But it was not the entire Jewish people, right? Nothing even close. And this is actually the belief of the OG Canaanite thinkers, right? The Yonatan Ratosh and all these people. They believe that Judaism as a religion was an attempt to solidify power by the elites that were ousted during the Babylonian exile and taken into Babylon, and they were removed from their land, right? And so they were a landed elite previously, but now they didn't have that land. So how could they solidify power? So it was through a religion.
Priesthood.
Yeah, the priesthood, exactly. The priesthood, Ezra, Nehemiah, all these figures, right? They are the founders of Judaism, not Moses, right? Not Abraham. It was Ezra and Nehemiah who really did it in order to maintain the power of that landed aristocracy and elite, and the priesthood as well. And so I find that to be a very interesting theory. But it's definitely something that needs to be explored because it's so taboo to even talk about it, in my opinion. But it's very, very interesting. I want to know if you have any thoughts, David, because it's such an interesting topic that is never discussed.
It's interesting. It's it could go either way for me. I like the more spiritual take on things. So I'm always thinking there was some, like what happened in Har Sinai. I think there was some kind of communal revelation or something like that. That's just me. But it's interesting how you think that, or that the OG Canaanites thought that it was the Jews in exile in Babylon that were kind of creating the Jewish religion, because that actually happens later after the Roman expulsion of the Jews. Is the Jewish religion really augments again, not by the ones that stayed, but by the ones who went to Babylon, and there was the Palestinian Talmud. A lot of people don't know about that. There was a Palestinian Talmud that almost nobody studies.
Made in the Galilee.
And those were the Jews that stayed, and they clung to the land, and the Babylonian Jews really respected them. They thought that they were higher, spiritually, because they've stuck to the land. Yeah. But in terms of academia, kind of like of
sure.
the day, they're like, the Falahim,
yeah. And David, you can maybe, because I've read a little bit about the Jerusalem Talmud, Palestinian Talmud versus the Babylonian one, and there's quite a bit of difference in terms of like the teachings and the understanding, and I always obviously I know that you kind of like you said, you like to stick to the spiritual stuff, but obviously I would imagine that the time spent in Babylon really affected the way that they saw kind of the teachings and the halakha in general, how they interpreted things. And so like one of the things that I've, the idea of, is it Rodef, the pursuer, right? The idea of rising
yes.
and killing first.
Right.
Right. Like that tends to be kind of a general, like when I think of Zionism and I think of like religious Zionism, that's what I kind of like imagine is like one of the biggest things is like, oh, the Arabs, they want to kill you, so that's why it's okay to kill the kids, right?
Yeah.
The Arabs, they want to hurt you, so rise and kill first, right? And do you feel like that's something? Where do you feel like that came from, or if there was an original point of that, where did that kind of concept come from?
I'm not sure, like whether it comes from the Jerusalem Talmud or
or at least where the origin point of that kind of like mentality, right? Because that's a mentality, that's a whole.
I don't think it's Talmudic, and I'll say why. A lot of the influence of the Talmud was post Bar Kokhba, right? And so the Jews were very fearful of being perceived as a revolt-based people. And so, for example, the story of Hanukkah, the reason for so long that the actual story of the Maccabees like fighting against an oppressive occupation by the Greeks was not taught was because the Jews, specifically the rabbis, wanted to downplay the revolt aspects, right? So we highlight the other aspects of it, the miracles, the religion part, but not the physical revolt, because Jews didn't want to be associated as the people that go against empire. So I would be skeptical to associate that with the Talmud. I would assume it's actually more ancient. I would assume it's more rooted actually in the land during the occupation periods, but I'm not 100% sure. That's just my guess.
But that concept does come. I mean, I couldn't pinpoint where, but I'm pretty sure that concept does come from the Talmud.
Interesting.
I mean, whether it's the Babylonian Talmud or the Jerusalem Talmud, I'm not sure, but I do think that the way that the law was codified, and it's codified by the Babylonian Talmud rather than the Jerusalem Talmud. So they were the more academics, the ones that went to Babylon. They're richer. First of all, they were richer. They were able to leave because they had riches. They went to Babylon, and their institutions were very, very rich, and they were able to just sit and learn. And they codified it. They basically took the Jewish people, and it started to become the Jewish religion in Babylon. And the Jewish religion as codified, it's going to be controversial, is the Trojan horse for Zionism. Okay, like I'll just ask this question, where are the major Jewish halachic authorities saying that what Israel is doing is wrong? where are you? Just say this is wrong, and then and you have detached Zionism from Judaism, but the religious authorities of this generation are not doing that, and it's precisely because there are certain problematic things in the codified law of Judaism that allowed for Zionism to become successful. I don't know if you want examples, but I mean,
it's all interpretation. Obviously, I'm sure that there's definitely, but like, would you? I mean, obviously, before the proto-Zionist or the modern Zionist movement, it was very kind of the idea, like the perception and the understanding of Judaism's role, especially in a nationalist movement, was very different than now. So there was obviously a change in the way that people started thinking, and obviously the halachic authorities, if you will, or they changed with it, right? So. And I don't know, it's a chicken and the egg thing. Like, it's kind of hard to kind of tell which one comes first, I guess, maybe to some degree.
They also perceive each other advancing each other's aims, right? So if a halakhic institution believes in settling the land of Israel, if it's being done through the state apparatus, well, they might believe the state itself is against halakha, right? The fact that they are priming settlements to come about, that advances their aim. So they're like, okay, this is kosher. We're not going to condemn this. We like this. But the only time you really see halakha being utilized against the state is from the Torah Karta, right? Even Satmars, like, they'll go on interviews at best.
Satmar's good.
They'll do
that issue.
But they'll never like come out into a protest. I've never seen a Satmar at a pro-Palestine protest, only in the Torah Karta. But again, like you said, David, at the same time, the Torah Karta's issue is not necessarily, right, with a concept of a Jewish state if it followed halakha, but it's how it came about, right? Through a secular individual and a secular movement that was not influenced by God, that came into the land, created a state, right? They claim if it was to be created, and they do believe that a Jewish state will come about, it will be divinely ordained, and that will be the way that it's ushered in through Moshiach, right? Not through three-door Herzl. And so you're right? Because if the Torah Karta's dreams came true and the end times came about, it would be very much, I would say, a bloodbath. It would be disgusting, honestly. And
this is a great segue, because at the People's Conference, I had a long discussion with Neturei Karta guys that were there.
I would love to hear about this.
And we went into the details. I was like, let's talk let's talk religion here. Let's get into it. Like, you know, I know, like, obviously the differences between Neturei Karta's beliefs, you know, compared to Zionism, and differences there, but the end, right, like where the result goes is still, and it's on in some ways it's even more kind of disturbing, because that's where you get into the thing of like where like the Gentiles are going to be like slaves, right?
Yeah. Did you ask them about that, by the way? Did you ask them blank?
Yeah.
And what did they say?
This is Ashkenazi end times, like rooted Ashkenazi end times. So Sephardists don't really believe this as much, but
this was interesting because like it was awkward, right? It was very awkward, but they're like, they said that it's not, we don't understand it now, but they're saying that it would feel fair. Basically, I'm trying to like reduce this as much as possible. They're basically saying that through the service of, like, you have 613 mitzvot to do as Jews, right? The rest of the Gentiles, the rest of the population, they only have to follow the 7 Noahide laws.
Yeah.
And so basically what they were basically saying is that like that you are not just you're not really serving the Jewish population, you're serving God. Yeah. And you're serving God through the understanding and the teachings through the Jewish people that have all of these mitzvot, that have this much more direct connection with God. And that it's not like a slave, right?
You know what that reminds me of? The easy cut of
that's very
deal.
Perfect. That's a perfect way to put it.
I'll give you another parallel. You will own nothing and you will be happy. It's the same thing. It's like, no, we know what's going to be best for you, and you're going to be okay with it, you know. Yeah. And this is going back to my point that like it really is what allowed Zionism to work, because there is this fundamental problem that needs to be worked out internally within the Jewish world that allowed for Zionism to be okay. Yeah, that sounds Jewish, right? Because there is a lot of Jewish supremacy.
Yeah.
In codified into Jewish law, and I think that the only way that the Jewish people are going to get through this, okay, because this has been a big blow to the Jewish people. I mean, what we have allowed to happen in our name is not forgivable. This is not okay, right? And the only way for us to get through as a Jewish people is for us to reform this internally.
Yeah.
Like there was the Reform movement, but that was not internal. You know, the Reform movement said, hey, there's kind of like problems with Judaism, so we're just going to do our own thing. But it wasn't the Jewish authorities saying, let's fix this from the inside, and there is a work around this because it is built into the Jewish faith that the halacha will change. You know, in this messianic time, like the halacha is supposed to change. You know, you call it tikkun. You've heard of the tikkun. There's tikkun just means correction. Like there's corrections that will have to be made, and I believe that these are the corrections that needs to be made. The things, everything related to this concept of Jewish supremacy, it's got to be addressed. Anything within Jewish law that is about genocide. I mean, Amalek is a Jewish concept. It is very, very problematic, and it is like.
Aren't they just giants? Like Bilal, don't we know them as giants? Like the
No,
Amalek?
They're Ghazans.
Because
you know,
in Arabic we say
the term
Amalek.
Emlak in Arabic.
What is that?
Okay, so it's different.
Emlak, the term Emlak means giant in Arabic.
Right.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really? Yes.
And I thought they were the same thing.
Word, but
Amalek was a Canaanite group.
Yes,
tribe.
Yeah.
Basically, right around the area where Gaza is today.
Yeah.
And it's funny because in Palestine we know that Ghazans are big boys.
Because dude,
like generally speaking, they're like bigger. Like
And
They're
West
like
Bankers are more they're more Jewish. You guys are
we're
short.
scrawnier, man. We're we're a little, we're we're scrappier. Like I think maybe it's the hills. I don't know what it is. It's something. The water. I don't know.
I do want to add, David, it's very interesting because the end times we're discussing is a very Ashkenazi specific end times, right? Sephardim do not believe in like this mass slavery events, right?
It's mass slavery less.
But it's like more utopic, I would say, right? It's more like slavery, like with a looser definition. But it's interesting because these are clearly influences of the societies of which they were inculcated in, right? The Ashkenazim, when they were in Europe, right? That influence was much more, right? The medieval stuff and like medieval Christianity, Protestantism coming about, all these influences really pushed their version of end times, probably within the Jewish realm. And Sephards, they like Maimonides, right? Had a much more rationalist approach to everything.
Right.
How much do you think of it has to do with the fact of all of the oppression that they dealt with in this appeal of settlement?
Sure.
And wishing for that moment where Jews are going to be the worlds are reversed. We literally just talked about, right? Like it really all comes down to it, man.
It's so interesting to see if you go back to medieval Spain when the Muslims had the southern portion of Spain, European Catholic empires had the north. You're seeing two really different forms of Judaism form within the Sephardic community, right? Like Sephards in the north believed in like dragons and stuff. Like this was actually like a well-known fact within the Sephardic world. Like all these weird things that Europeans believe, right? Muslims are like, no, you guys are idiots. Like this is not true. And in southern Spain, where Maimonides was and all these other Sephardic thinkers, that's a much more rationalist approach, right? Maimonides is big on the rationalist understanding of the Torah, of Judaism, right? With like even miracles in the Torah, like Moses splitting the sea. Sephards emphasized there was a wind that basically did that, right? It wasn't God or Moses striking the hammer and God doing it himself, right? Jacob, like wrestling with an angel was in his head. It didn't actually happen, right? This is a Sephardic interpretation to a lot of these stories. So it makes it much more rationalist. And it's interesting when we talk about Notori Karta's approach to Zionism, and we compare that to the Sephardic world. I would say the Sephardic antipathy to Zionism was their rootedness in these societies, right? Because they perceived themselves as equals, they had a much better time, so there was a greater hesitancy, right? But when we talk about religious Sephardic interpretation, I think they had a much easier time coming to Zionism than Ashkenazim, right? Especially religious Ashkenazim, because as we were talking about before, the Torah Karta says there has to be Moshiach, right? There has to be the direct divine that we can see fueling this, whereas Sephards believe in a rationalist approach. So Theodor Herzl could be influenced by God to achieve a biblical aim, right? And so it's very interesting. So I think in the Sephardic community, that's why we see less religious pushback to Zionism. I don't know a single Sephardic rabbi that is coming out and saying anything the state of Israel is doing is wrong. But I can point to Satmars, Ashkenazim, that's an Ashkenazi movement. I can point to the Torah Karta, multiple Ashkenazi movements that are against Zionism due to its lack of religiosity, because they don't have that rationalist mindset ingrained within them, right? It has to be directly divine related. And so I find that fascinating, very fascinating indeed. Yeah. It's something I never even put together before this conversation. David, would you say, do you follow, would you say you follow Sephardic liturgy, or would you say because of your wife, or would you say you're still Ashkenazi?
Even before I met, actually, this is kind of the conversation we had a night. Everyone, Slichot, this is the month of Elul. We also call it Elul. I only realized recently that you all have the same names that we have for the months of the year.
Yes.
And Elul is the month before Rosh Hashanah. And for Sfaradim, for Ashkenazim, you start this prayer a few days before Rosh Hashanah, but for Sfaradim, you start on the first day or the second day of Elul. You do it for every night. It's like a mass almost. It's like a midnight prayer. It's about an hour long. You do it every night.
Bilal, does Rosh Hashanah sound a little Arabic to you?
And you do.
It means Ras Hashanah.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So New Year's, right?
Oh my God. I just put those together. Oh my God.
I missed that.
End of the year.
Rosh Hashanah
is Rosh Hashanah like the first month of the year?
Head of the year, top
Yes.
of the year.
I mean, that's why we call it Rosh Hashanah, because the head of the year. Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Oh my God, I would have never got that, Hayan.
Yeah, I think my mom told me about it. And
Crazy connection. Yeah.
So
it's like Shalom, Salam. Like we have a lot of similarities.
Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem.
Yeah, they say Shalom Aleichem.
Yeah. We had a night in Haifa where we did a kind of alternative slichot, which was with Palestinians and Jews together. And I spoke about how, like, coming here, as with an Ashkenazi background, I realized that I'm coming to, I'm not coming to Europe, and I want to integrate. I don't see myself as a colonizer. Like this whole thing about, later I find out about the Palestinian story, but when I come here, I'm coming here because I'm coming back to my Jewish roots, and it's actually a little bit connected to a piece I wrote that we're going to publish soon about how I feel about the settler.
I wanted to publish it after this talk, but we'll publish it after this. Yeah.
I mean, settler. I realized that I actually am a settler. Because I have decided to become a citizen of Israel, which is as a colonial power.
Yeah.
But I did not intend I did not realize that process was happening. When I came here, I felt like I was integrating into my roots. But then I'm like, okay, but this is not Europe. So I want to find out, like, what is the sound of this place, and what is the prayer of this place. And before I met Hadar, I became more attracted to the more Edud Mizrach, this Sephardi kind of way of prayer, because I want to connect with those roots that I'm looking for. Someone invites me to the Edud Mizrach version of Slichot, which is completely different from Ashkenazi. It's very beautiful. It has lots of melodies that probably you'd be familiar with, and one of them, that's why I asked you about Dal'una.
Dal'una, yeah.
Because one of the, and I only find this out about a couple of years ago, is that one of the tunes in the Slichot prayer is Dal'una. It's the Dal'una tune, but with Hebrew words. And the question is,
it's very, very well known in Palestinian culture. It's been around for a long time.
And is it only Palestinian? Is it also Syrian and Lebanese, or is it specifically Palestinian?
I've heard it in Lebanon. I've heard Lebanese use the same ala dal'una. The words after, the nice thing about dal'una is that it's kind of like an ad lib in many ways. Like there are obviously ones that are much like lyrics that are like much more kind of common, but people use that same lahan, the same melody.
We say lahan in Hebrew also.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So lahan and we just use that same melody to and so like for weddings, especially in Palestine right now, it's very, very popular. is you have like gosh, why am I blanking on this? It's a type of poetry. Mawal, a mawal. And dal'una can be used in a mawal, which basically is, you'll hear sometimes you'll hear them start with of, and they'll start with a they'll talk about the family or the groom and the bride and the groom where they're from and that they're like it's really just like kind of like an uplifting like a type of like giving them some juice, you know what I mean, like juicing them up. Right, like this guy's awesome type thing, right? And their family is awesome, and then they talk. So that involves a lot. And speaking of melodies, I sent it to the music group that we have, the WhatsApp music page. There's one song that I hadn't ever put together until much recently. I like had to go back and look at the lyrics. Which it talks about Ibn Canaan, Ibn Canaan, right? Yeah. Like it's part of our thing, like the son of Canaan, like go and plow the fields, go and do this, go and do that, like Shidd al-himma ya Ibn Canaan, like work yourself, like and so like these words, these meanings are so deeply ingrained that we just miss it, like we don't even think about it. It's in our songs, it's in our music. And even the terms, like I was okay. So you're gonna laugh. I've been studying the Sefer Yetzirah a lot. Like I've been really looking into it like deeply. Just I love the spirituality of it, and like I'm noticing a lot of similarities between, for example, Sufi Islam, which my family originally Bed Dukku. The term Bed Dukku. The reason it's called Bed Dukku is because it's the house of a dakkak, where the person that started the family, Umar al-Dakkak, was a Sufi religious leader.
What is a dakkak?
A dakkak is one who beduk, the one who plays the tabla. Oh. And so the Sufis were well known to be very spiritual and musically kind of connected and mystical and that kind of thing. And so whenever there was a wedding around, they would say, "Oh, go to the dakkak's house, bring the dakkak so he can play a tune, play melodies for us and everything for the music." And so there's a lot of terms that we use even within our own, like for example, neshama, right? And neshama, soul, the spirit, right? That's a term that is very deeply connected to the Kabbalah and to like the tree of life and like the Sephirot, like the 10 Sephirot, like all of that is deeply connected. And so like understanding how these kind of like, this is all one origin story. Like there's a secret here that like needs to be kind of like rediscovered, And
do you have the Sephirot in are you familiar with Sufi traditions?
Yes, to some degree. I'm still learning. I'm reading a lot about Ibn Arabi, and Ibn Arabi was a very well-known Sufi leader, Sufi kind of thinker from the Maghreb area. But he ended up in Palestine for a long period of time. Spent a lot of time in Jerusalem before traveling to Mecca, and spending the rest of his days in Mecca. But yes, there's a lot of similarities with the Sephirot, with the way that he kind of like classified and codified spirituality and like that ladder to the eternal, the ladder to kind of like the universe, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like the idea of wahdat al-wujud, which is an idea that the oneness of God being kind of like that essentially that God is that we are all just a reflection. We are reflections of God's attributes, which are really the Sephirot, right?
That's Sephirot, exactly.
That's basically what this Sephirot.
And so we have Asamillah, the names of God. We believe that those are the attributes of God. In reality, he believes that they're unlimited, that it's not just 10 or that it's whatever, that it's really an unlimited amount of attributes, and we're really just reflections, kind of like in a mirror. A mirror is like a reflection is not you, right? But it looks like you, but it's not your mass. It's not, it doesn't have your physical attributes, but it looks like you. And so it's kind of the same idea.
In Hebrew, it's B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, right? So it's not the same, but it's in the image of. So it's very fascinating.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of similarities there, and I'm still like really kind of so like right now. That's my spiritual goals right now is to like understand that kind of spiritual connection further and really kind of see those similarities and see where, because I really do feel like, man, the more you look into it, the more you realize, and that there's so much that's just under the cusp, under the crust, that we just need to really kind of understand deeper. And that's why I really, like, we talked about this, I think, in one of our first discussions. I think that the real answer, to the solution to all this, is for the religious communities, for the Muslims, for the Christians, for the Jews. That's where this is going to solve itself. It's
Amen.
not these secular groups. It's not these like political nationalists. It's really that's really where that solution is going to come into play.
The people who truly understand their identity, right? And that includes religion, that includes culture, includes our history. And it's so fascinating, right? Because when I say this, I actually encounter more pushback from the pro-Palestinian side, right? Because they're very adamant this is not a religious conflict. I'm not saying it's a religious conflict, right? But I'm saying religion is part of the problem, so it needs to be part of the solution. And not only that, when you truly dive into our two peoples, right? Which camp knows that better, right? The Jews in Tel Aviv or the Jews currently in the settlements in Jerusalem? Which camp knows that better on the Palestinian side, right? Those in Hamas or those in Fatah and the secular groups, right?
Correct.
That really much more in, I would say, the modern plane of existence rather than Hamas, which cares about their lineage, they care about their religion, they care about what means to be a Palestinian more than anyone else, in my eyes. And so I fully agree.
HTS, like they ended up being the ones to liberate Syria after all, when there were these like secular movements in Turkey, the exiled government, and all of them that we were kind of betting on to figure out a diplomatic solution. In the end, it was just a bunch of Islamists that went from Idlib to Damascus, stormed it, and ended up freeing the country in the end. There is an element to that is true. Like in the end,
spirituality plays a big, is a huge changer, man. It's a big game changer, you know?
And I'll build on your idea even more, Bilal. You mentioned earlier in the conversation how there's the hidden imam and there's the imam, and that's similar to something that we were talking about in Judaism.
The Rebbe being alive.
The Rebbe being alive, and but it's just he's secretly still with us, but he's hidden.
Yes.
It's like the hidden imam. You know, it's a thought that I've had for a long time now, is that, you know, what if? What if? Okay, I mean, we truly did have visionaries that saw pieces of the future, but we all have pieces of the puzzle. And then all we have to do is just start talking with each other, and then we find out, oh, what we think is going to happen is actually what you think is going to happen. Yeah. You know, and I mean, one of the main things that like struck me is that if you really look into things, we all kind of agree that there's supposed to be two figures. It's just an interesting thing that people think that the Jews believe there's going to be a Mashiach, but it's not exactly that. I'm Jewish. The Jewish people think the Jewish tradition is that there's a Mashiach ben David, but there's also Mashiach ben Yosef. There's the son of the Mashiach, son of Joseph. There's two figures, and there's both supposed to do different things.
And they both come from the Davidic line, or is it just Mashiach ben David comes from the Davidic?
One's supposed to come from Joseph, which is, you know, is where would the Samaritans actually believe that they come from? The Samaritans believe that they come from Manasseh and Ephraim, which are the two sons of Joseph.
Yes.
But then if you look at Islam, Islam believes that there's supposed to be the Mahdi, but there's also Isa is supposed to come back. So those are two figures. And if you look at Christianity, they believe that Elijah is supposed to come back for the second coming. You know, there's these two figures, and like, wait a second, are we all talking about the same thing? You know, and we're just seeing it from a different point of view.
Oh, if you really want to blow your mind, let's start talking about the masculinity and femininity that's found in for example, the Sephiroth verse and Islam and in Christianity. I mean, it's everywhere, right? It's just the binary. That's a whole separate conversation. Yeah, I mean, it's
in the Quran. There's the Sakina or something.
Sakina the Sakina is real.
We have the Shekhinah. And is that the exact same concept?
It is the same concept.
Oh, so there you go.
Yeah.
Can you guys elaborate? I'm a little lost.
And I did not.
You go ahead, David. I'd like to hear your explanation. I'll try to like see if there's any differences.
I mean it from our point of view, and I only heard about this on that night in Haifa where we're with Palestinian Jews together, and I was speaking with my friend, and we were talking about he says, yeah, that's in the Quran, and he says it's 6 times. We have the concept of the Shekhinah. So there's Hashem, who is the male form of the male divine form, and if you ask anyone, what do you think of God according to the Jews? Like, oh, it's this guy with the beard and he's sitting on the throne, and there is that kind of imagery. There's definitely that kind of imagery, but if you look in the more mystical text, it's not really so much in the Tanakh. You can find it's more hidden, but if you look in the more mystical traditions like the Zohar, it's very explicit in the Zohar. Is that there's the divine female, and the divine female is called the Shekhinah, and then you're like, wait a second, don't you think that? But it was that polytheism
or pantheism, right?
God's one, and then that's when you get into the Sfirot. Is the concept of Sfirot is that there's no, Hashem is one, but there's different aspects.
Yes.
And the Shekhinah is an aspect of this oneness. So there's a female aspect and there's a male aspect.
So
and how would you describe it in Islam?
Yes, in Islam, for example, the way that, like, for example, Ibn Arabi in Suhuf al-Makkiyah, I believe it's called. It's basically the revelations in Mecca. The Meccan Revelations is the book. It's like 20,000 pages long. I haven't bothered to read through it yet. It's very long. But it's he talks about a vision that he had when he was at the Black Stone at Mecca, when he was there at the Black Stone, which obviously in Islam we believe that that it was brought down from heaven, right? And that that Abraham was the one that built the Kaaba. Right. And he was the one that placed the stone there, the black stone, and that it was actually white when it first came down and it became black over time. And there's a lot of similarities there with transferring your sins and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of similarities there. But more importantly, the Sakina is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has lots of that we are just kind of reflections of all of these attributes of God, and some of these attributes almost seem kind of that they kind of clash, right? That God is so strong, and that He's powerful, and that He's authoritarian, and that His rule goes. But then at the same time, that He's compassionate, and that He's merciful, and that He's and so there's feminine traits, compassion. So, for example, in the Sefirot, there's wisdom and there's understanding, right? Bina and Mukhma, so these are
Hikmah in Arabic.
Al-Hikmah, correct, which is wisdom in Arabic, right? And so that's wisdom is on the feminine side. Whereas a bina, or I may have got that.
Yes, yeah. Chokhmah is the male, and bina
Chokhmah is the male, and understanding is the female. So you can only get understanding from wisdom, right? So and that's, by the way, Adam, the rib was given to Eve. So there's the female comes from the male. There's a lot of similarities there. In Islam, for example, we believe that it was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power, and that his will to create, right? He is one, right? But He's the independent variable, and His created is the dependent variable, right? So there's always this binary, this double kind of thing there. So like God is the oneness of God is there, but the created is dependent upon the creator. But the creator, in many ways, without the created, the creator cannot be. It's not creating anything without the created, right? Even though, so it's. I'm really bad at explaining this. I'm still learning.
That is very much a Jewish sentiment also. When you
And
look
it's the
into
same. And when you read Ibn Arabi or you read oh my gosh, Ibn Sab'in, or you read these people, they were very deeply connected to the Kabbalah movement at the time too. These people learned in the same houses of wisdom. They passed this information back and forth to each other. The Jewish mysticism and was just as inspired from Muslim scholars as Muslim scholars were inspired by Jewish mysticism. It's all kind of, and so like I feel like when I'm reading all this stuff, it's like I'm rediscovering. Like this is because tell me, like, have you ever heard of like any mainstream Muslim sheikh or imam? Never, not a single word of this stuff.
Ibn
It just
Arabi,
does not exist.
Farabi, like all these like amazing thinkers. I had to like take a specific Islamic philosophy course in university to learn about. I would have never come across these thinkers any other way, and it's a shame because it is literally like rediscovering your religion that you followed for your whole life.
100%. And what's crazy is like we talk about the Islamic Golden Age and why Islam kind of like Muslim countries or the Muslim people, the Ummah in general, kind of like started to fall after the Mongolian the sack of Baghdad. Yeah, well, if you look at the time frame, Sufism and Islamic mysticism, that at the height is when also was the height of the Islamic Golden Age.
Yeah.
So like these discussions was what made Islam great. Is what made the tolerancy of like all of these people and like the harmony between all of these groups being able to love God all together, right? Yeah. That's what made that was probably the most peaceful time during that time. And since then it's been like now there's a old saying that the doors of ijtihad are closed, right? This was after
hell yeah, man.
Ijtihad
like thought, like actually putting in thought, it's
or like rational thought, right? So there's an actual term in
it's like discernment,
Hebrew,
but people think that you have to be like an expert to do it now.
And so then they moved from ijtihad to taqlid.
Exactly.
And taqlid is
tradition.
Copying,
we were talking about progressive versus tradition. I think ijtihad is basically progressivism and taqlid is basically traditionalism. Like that's my take on that. Like historically, Islam wasn't always standardized. Like you could go to different parts of the world where Islam is practiced and see different, because they merged it with whatever the culture was there. But
now would you say that? Sorry, now would you say
it's
that
very
Islam is
highly standardized? And in fact, actually, we've taken on like, how like Jews kind of have like
hierarchical almost.
Well, like there was one authority. There used to be like you could be like a thinker like Ibn Arabi or like a Farabi like kind of guy that actually like questions stuff, and it might be controversial. Yeah, you might like be persecuted for it, but it was a lot more acceptable to think outside the bounds of whatever. But like like a bunch of different movements came about, like the Salaf movement. Like Saudi started funding madrasas around the world. Like even like 400 years I think after the Prophet died, like they really started to codify like everyday tradition and stuff like that. And like like Muslims have kind of adopted like the Jewish obsession over like very like minute details and stuff like that. Like sorry if I'm not phrasing this very right, but you know what I'm talking about. Like
very accurate. Yeah.
What is that called again? Like the very minute stuff, like I don't know, obsession over like whether you can do wudu over your socks, stuff like that. Like these are the biggest questions
stupidest
of
little
our existence.
Things.
You know what I mean? Like
we have that.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is like Muslims have, maybe as a response to colonialism. This is one of the takes that I've seen. Like we lost a lot of power, and so the only things we had domain over was our daily habits and practices, and so that's what we started obsessing over instead of like big questions.
Some guy at the masjid one time when I went to go pray, I swear to God, this happened to me. Some guy after I was done, like when you first get to a masjid, a mosque, you're supposed to do just 2 rak'at, like a small prayer when you get there. It's like the prayer of just entering the masjid. And right after I was done, this guy comes up to me and goes, "Salatak batla." I'm like, "Why? What did I do?" He's basically saying it was like null, like void, like your prayer was void. I was like, "Why?" He's like, "It's because your pants was below your ankles and it needs to be above your ankles." And I was like, And granted, I was this was when I was younger and a little bit more rude. But I was just like, I'll deal with that with God. Me and God will talk about that. Appreciate it. We'll talk.
Still
about
a good response though.
Wild. I could talk about this for hours, guys. And I hate to do this, but my son is going to be here in about 5-7 minutes, so I need to run upstairs before his bus shows up.
Okay.
But it was a pleasure.
This was a fantastic conversation, and I think I'm going to be rewatching this episode 1,000 times because the wisdom, especially like in the second half, was just mind blowing. This was absolutely insane.
We could pick this up another time because this is my love. Like what we're talking about now. Like
I love it. I'm super excited to talk about this more, and then give you guys like an update of what I've learned because I'm definitely going into it quite deeply here. So, but yeah, I love it, guys, and I can't wait to talk again.
Amen, man. Inshallah, B'ezrat Hashem, the next conversation is beautiful or even more beautiful than this one, man. I really love this. This is what I'm passionate for, man. 100%. All right.
All right,
love
guys.
You
all.
Take it easy, guys. Shalom, salam.